In the late 1800s, ruins of an ancient civilization were found in Harappa, India. For over a century, it was believed to be a pre-Vedic civilization. However, startling new evidence shows that the Harappan civilization was actually a later phase of India's ancient Vedic civilization. On October 4th, 1996, scholars and scientists from around the world gathered in Atlanta, Georgia, to present the evidence confirming Vedic culture to be the world's most ancient, largest, and continuous cultural sequence.
Guests, participants to this conference, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, namaste. I am deeply honored by your invitation to deliver this inaugural address to this prestigious conference. The list of participants and topics to be covered is truly impressive. So that all of us who are here present must feel honored to be in such company. Two of your keynote speakers, Professor Jim Schaefer and B.B. Lal, will no doubt shed light on that pioneer center of early enlightenment, namely the Indus Sarasvati civilization. We would like to know more about the self-sufficient agriculture with which this fertile triangle of the Indus and Sarasvati nurtured through irrigation and crop rotation. Perhaps this conference will tell us more about the ancient cities which existed, apparently reached its highest point from the 3rd to the 2nd millennia before Christ. Professors Klostermaier and Keck will, we anticipate, enlighten us about the considerable contribution which Hindu civilization made to the world in the areas of thought and belief. This of course occurred not only in the realm of pure philosophy, but equally in the applied sciences such as astronomy, biology, physics. We eagerly await their wisdom. It was Rudyard Kipling, that arch imperialist, who wrote that east is east and west is west, and ne'er the twain shall meet. In this conference, you are turning Kipling upon his head. Now east is becoming west, and west is drawing heavily from the ancient founts of Oriental knowledge. When in 1875 Swami Dayanand Saraswati founded the Arya Samaj and gave it the motto, "Go back to the Vedas," these are the aspects of Hinduism to which he was referring. The Arya Samaj, in true Vedic fashion, upheld monotheism, opposed caste restrictions and child marriages, supported sea voyages, female education, and the remarriage of widows. The Emperor Ashoka decreed the setting up of Ayurvedic hospitals for people and animals throughout his empire. Such an alternative Indian ways of seeking to solve our problems can be instructive to a world in which the mammon of materialism is leading us to lose sight of essential spiritual values. We must now take a step backward so that we can build a platform for a great leap forward. What better platform can we create than that of the Indus Sarasvati civilization of ancient India? I wish you success in this major conference, and may God bless you all.
We have here the DeKalb County Executive Officer, Ms. Leon Leviton. She is the first woman officer elected to the DeKalb County Board of Commissioners.
Welcome to the Prime Minister and his lovely wife, who are here from Trinidad and Tobago. DeKalb County is very privileged to have you here, and today it really is wonderful to see so many scholars here. We also are very proud of the fact that we have Emory University, CDC here, Agnes Scott, Oglethorpe, and DeKalb College. So we're also what I call a mecca of higher learning. So we're very, very proud when we have a group such as you that come here, and we're very, very honored to have you here. Today we see you all coming together, looking to make our world a better place. And I'm reminded of the Hindu proverb that says, "Help thy brother's boat across, and lo, thine own has reached the shore." Thank you for being with us, and we hope that you will have a very enjoyable, fruitful meeting here. Thank you so much for giving me the privilege.
Namaste. It means I bow my head to the expression of divinity in all of you. With these words, I welcome our honorable guest, Prime Minister, all the scholars who are gathered here from distant part of the world, all those learned scholars who have dedicated to get the truth of anthropology, sociology, archaeology, to get the records straight. As you know, the history gets distorted as time passes on by certain vested interests, and now the democratic society can get the truth. I welcome all of you on behalf of Vedic Temple and several other organizations, Shakti Mandir, Atlanta Hindu Temple, Vishwa Hindu Parishad, Arya Samaj, as well as many other in contributions from Hare Krishna and many other organizations of this land. So I welcome all of you. Thank you.
This tradition of holding conferences is found in every intellectual society.
I am particularly reminded of a big gathering which once took place in Naimisharanya. As many as 88,000 people assembled in Naimisharanya, Uttar Pradesh, which is still a spot widely visited by Hindus and others. Such a truth is something very high in any pursuit that we can follow. This Sanatan goal has to be fulfilled and has to be rediscovered by every generation. There is an area which we can term broadly as ancient India, particularly its civilization, which is sometimes attributed to Indus Saraswati age. They had fallen under the spell of darkness. Now that colonial interests have faded and humanity is now on the path of owning its past in whatever form and whatever region it came from, there is an interest in knowing the truth about this ancient civilization, which is ancient India and the Indus Saraswati age. And this scholarly contribution that we shall have here, I think, would be a great turning point in this phase of the human history. It's not only for India, it's for the whole humanity.
Next we have Swami Paramahans Maheshwaranandaji, from Austria. I will read Swamiji's thought as his introduction. To practice yoga in daily life means to do positive work for the benefit of mankind. The main commitment of yoga in daily life is to protect all living creatures and their specific form or manifestation of existence. To understand this, it is necessary to start a different way of thinking and acting in life. It is necessary to introduce tolerance and understanding not only between individuals but among all nations, cultures and religions as well. We will ask Swamiji to take few minutes to offer his blessings on this occasion.
Om Karvindu Sayuktam Nityadayanta Yoginam Kamnam Mokshpadam Che Om Karaya Namo Namah Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Blessed Self, dear brothers and sisters, I am very happy to be here today and to take part in this international conference. The India and the ancient India, what has given to the mankind and still what is giving is undescribable. I have not been a student of the history, nor I am some scientist, but I am simply a yogi, a sannyasi. And what I am doing and giving to the mankind around the whole world is that mutual understanding among the human societies as well as the other creatures. Thou shalt not kill does not mean it only limited to the human, but to every creature. We call Atma so Pramatma. Every living entity is the form of the Supreme. If we do not respect them, if we do not understand them, then we do not understand what means to be the human. Ahimsa Paramo Dharma. What the ancient Indians, the rishis, to the Vedas, what they offer to the human is this: to know thyself.
This concludes our morning session, and thank you very much, all of you. Again, I would like to welcome you to this Indus Sarasvati conference.
Thank you very much.
I felt so safe earlier.
I felt so safe. Now it's like, okay.
Okay, we got Secret Service, FBI, and the CIA all in.
स्वस्तिन इंद्रो बृहस्पतिः स्वस्तिनः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्तिनः राजो अरिष्टनेमि स्वस्तिनो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु.
What percentage of India has been excavated properly?
Oh, 1%? Professor Lau would be able to give you a better figure on that than I am.
So in other words, our data is still rather limited.
Oh, it's always limited. And in fact, it's getting destroyed. And the stuff's getting destroyed every day.
The archaeological work in India has continued for the last 50 years, and many advances and many new things have been discovered. One, it's been discovered that most of the Harappan and ancient urban sites in India are on the dried banks of the Sarasvati River, which was a great river that flowed in the west of India, roughly parallel to the Indus, drying up around 4,000 years ago. Now, the Vedas know of this river, and it is the main center of Vedic habitation. So how can the Vedas be speaking of a river that dried up before they got there? Because the Aryan invasion theory would place the Vedic people in India at 1500 BC and later, yet the Vedas now we find reflect the geography of India 2000 BC and earlier. In addition, Vedic traits like fire altars have been found in these Harappan sites as well, and we have also found many other things. For example, the idea that the Vedic people came invaders on the horse. There have been horses also found in Harappan sites as well. There was a tendency to identify the Vedic people with an iron-based culture, which was fairly late. But now we've discovered that the Vedic term for iron really means copper. And even in India today, all Vedic rituals are done with copper because this represents the original metal they used. So most of the points behind the Aryan invasion theory have been refuted. There is no evidence of migration into India, no evidence of destruction of cities. There's an evidence of the continuity of the same people and the same culture as developed in India later. The Vedas are equivalent to the type of cultural traits and the type of geography of the 3rd millennium BC and earlier. Well, the interesting thing about Mahabharata is Mahabharata lists the whole course of the Sarasvati River. So the Mahabharata, at least when it was initially done, the Sarasvati was still flowing. And since the Sarasvati River dried up at 2000 BC, according to the archaeologists, Mahabharata also has to be before that period in order for them to know of the extent of that particular river. Astronomical evidence is that there are certain astronomical references in Vedic texts. For example, in the later Vedic period, they speak of the time when the Kritikas or the Pleiades marked the vernal equinox, and the summer solstice occurred in a region called Magha, which relates to the early portion of the sign Leo. So this is easy to astronomically date as the period of around 2500 BC. In all these areas we see the same similar information that the Vedic age has to go back well into the 3rd millennium BC, if not further. The east of India was a much more of a floodplain, a marshland region, and a region of extensive silting. It's much more difficult area to excavate and deal with from an archaeological perspective, while the west of India, being a relatively arid, semi-desert climate, is much more easy to excavate.
How important is this conference?
Well, it represents the first real Vedic conference in the West that's dealing with the new issues of archaeology and also with the deeper literary approach to the Vedas. And its new view of the Vedas is going to challenge a lot of the present views of history and even the meaning of culture and civilization. So there is a lot of evidence supporting this indigenous nature of Vedic civilization, and even linguistic evidence. There's evidence of anything of a migration out of India rather than an intrusion into India. So because of the new discoveries in India about the Sarasvati River, about the Vedic culture being located on the Sarasvati River, on Vedic traits being found in ancient urban settlements in India, we have a position where now we have to take seriously these spiritual comments in the Vedas and no longer look upon them as something, as a misinterpretation. Some of the negative social customs that have arisen in India, the rigid division of caste, the low position of women, and other things like that, we find much less of that in the Vedic period. In fact, in many instances in the Vedic period, you don't find that at all. We find a society that's much more creative, much more spiritual, much more open, and much more integrated with itself.
In the Vedic view, civilization is not something invented by human beings. True civilization or true culture is based upon discovering the underlying laws of the universe, the underlying intelligence of the universe. The Vedas are the mantras of rishis, sages, and yogis, that they're not just simply, as they're looked at in the scholarly world, primitive poetry. We also have to look at the internal dimensions of the teaching, and that is actually the primary level on which the Vedas have importance. A lot of the historical, social things are mentioned incidentally. All the beauty you see in Upanishads and Gita is already there in Rig Veda. It didn't develop later. It simply changed its language and form relative to the needs of a different yuga. Thank you.
He is dedicated to the study of interface of science and religion. And this is a very important thing. People generally think that science has nothing to do with religion and religion has nothing to do with science, in which I believe is a fallacy. Because religion, as you begin to know now, with the dissemination of knowledge, particularly of the yoga system. By yoga, I do not mean the physical exercises, but the entire integration. Then we find that after all, science and religion, they all want to know the truth, what is the reality. Very good subject of interaction of science and religion.
The topic tonight is question of evidence for advanced scientific knowledge in the ancient Vedic civilization as preserved in certain astronomical texts. I'm specifically going to be making reference to the Surya Siddhanta and the Bhagavad Purana. I'm going to give two examples showing how by looking carefully at statements in these old texts, you can find evidence of a very high standard of scientific knowledge, specifically in the area of astronomy. This suggests that prior to our present somewhat degraded phase of civilization, there must have been a higher phase of civilization in which this knowledge was cultivated. So here we have planetary diameters. In each pair of bars here we have the modern value versus the value given in Surya Siddhanta. You'll notice there's a close agreement between the bars. Basically, all of these pairs of bars agree within about 10%. So with the development of the telescope and modern measurements of the distances of the planets, we can now calculate the planetary diameters. But here we have evidence that in the Surya Siddhanta, the planetary diameters were known. There's a section in the Bhagavad Purana called the 5th Canto, which talks about cosmology and astronomy. Specifically, it gives a model of the Earth. This Earth model is called Bhumandala. The first thing that is striking about this description of the Earth is that, roughly speaking, it's on the same scale of magnitude as the solar system as we understand it today. So that's sort of intriguing as a clue. It turns out, though, that if you look in detail, you'll see that there are very close correspondences with the solar system. I also tried to experiment with the idea that, well, could it be that if you just put down some dvipas and some orbits at random, maybe you get these kinds of patterns, because after all, so many different lines, they're bound to match up somehow if you just throw them down at random. So I tested that to see if that would happen or not, and that doesn't happen. But essentially, if you run a computer program and do a lot of random arrangements of dvipas and orbits and see how they match up, they tend to match up worse than the actual case. And it's about 95% probability in favor of the hypothesis that this is a significant correlation. So that's my second example. There are additional examples of this kind of thing in Vedic literature, and I think it would be interesting for people to search for them. The basic idea is look for evidence of modern advanced astronomical knowledge. You may find it popping up in very unusual places.
Modern science has confirmed the accuracy of ancient Vedic astronomy.
The material that I have uses a geocentric system. The Bhagavatam is based on a geocentric system, and the Jyotisha Shastras are also. I am suggesting, however, that there are signs of advanced knowledge in the past. So however they expressed their knowledge, they probably, if my hypothesis is correct, they probably had to understand the same things that modern scientists understand, but they may have expressed those things in different language and different terminology.
Needham's great work on Chinese science mentions that even at the turn of the so-called BC, a whole colony of Chinese Buddhist astronomers, a whole colony of them, because of the superiority of Indian astronomers in predicting eclipses. And I wanted to ask your opinion about it. You know, the fascination with the symbol 108 in all of the both Hinduism and Buddhism. I've always maintained that it has astronomical origins.
Well, regarding 108, one can almost say that that is a constant of nature. It has many astronomical references. For example, the number of days in the orbit of Saturn, if you look at that, it's close to a multiple of 108. The number of days in the orbit of Jupiter, likewise. There's a whole series of astronomical relations that seem to involve 108, which may well be related to why that number is used so much. Let me just say briefly, without going into further detail, that if you look at the system of the yugas and manvantars and so forth, it's very much related to astronomy. Those cycles have to do with astronomical cycles.
That is the third canto of Bhagavatam. The Kala description is very nice. The third canto of Bhagavatam.
Oh yes. In the third canto of Bhagavatam, there's a chapter called Calculation of Time from the Atom, which contains a lot of information about time.
You can read that if you know something.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What are the other areas you are looking into?
Well, I'm looking into questions involving the dating of Kali Yuga and the astronomical alignment that occurred at the beginning of that time. I'm also looking at the precession of the equinoxes, the proper motions of stars, and how you can derive dates of certain star tables found in the Jyotisha Shastras based on this. Thank you.
The Sarasvati River, long thought to be mythological, has been scientifically proven to have existed. Its course is exactly as it is described in the Vedic scriptures. Because we know that the river was completely dry by the 2nd millennium BC, this proves that the Vedic scriptures are a minimum of 5,000 years old. This also proves that the Indus Valley civilization was Vedic and was a Saraswati River-based culture.
One of the stories shed some light to the meteorological evidence which has been discovered by NASA recently on the drying up of Sarasvati. These satellite photographs have been there even before that has been. They are published in a volume in 1984. They are available there. And there is ample evidence of A, the river oscillating, and B, drying up of satellite. You see, we have got a series of factual facts, and they happen also all along, right from the start of the river, from Nepal to northern Rajasthan and in Pakistan.
This course is an exact match with ancient Vedic descriptions of the Saraswati River, thus confirming the historical basis of the Vedic scriptures.
त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात् त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात् त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात्